The final years of the Eastern Han Dynasty unfolded under a sky growing heavier with despair, a time when the empire's authority still appeared intact from a distance, but was already collapsing from within. Natural disasters, corrupt politics, and the suffering of millions created the perfect conditions for a massive rebellion. During the reign of Emperor Ling, the Han court increasingly fell under the influence of the powerful eunuch faction, whose members manipulated imperial decisions and treated the empire's administration as their personal marketplace. Government offices were openly bought and sold, and positions of authority were granted not to the worthy, but to those who could pay the highest amount of gold. The result was a bureaucracy filled with greedy officials who exploited the people in every corner of the realm. Misfortune struck repeatedly across the empire. Floods destroyed farmland, droughts left vast regions barren, and locust plagues consumed what remained of the harvests. Even as countless families faced starvation, tax collectors continued to demand grain and money in full. Villagers often chose between abandoning their homes or dying where they stood. With the imperial court preoccupied with internal rivalries and corruption, no relief came. Under such devastating circumstances, the people naturally turned toward belief and spiritual guidance, seeking an alternative path to survival. It was in this climate that Zhang Jue, a mystic and healer known for his knowledge of traditional medicines, began traveling from village to village, treating the sick and preaching a doctrine he called the Way of Great Peace. His words resonated deeply with the suffering masses, who saw in him not only a healer, but a savior who promised the end of oppression. Zhang Jue taught that the era of the Han, referred to as the blue sky, was nearing its end, and that a new age, symbolized by the yellow sky, would soon rise. His message spread with astonishing speed. Villagers gathered in secret, studied his teachings, formed communities of followers, and eventually began organizing military formations. By the year 184, Zhang Jue and his brothers, Zhang Bao and Zhang Liang, commanded a movement large enough to challenge the Han government directly. Their followers tied yellow cloth around their heads, a symbol of unity, and the uprising became known forever as the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Tens of thousands rose simultaneously across the empire, attacking local commanderies and counties. The coordinated revolt caught the Han government entirely off guard, plunging the realm into chaos. With the central authority paralyzed, the court desperately appointed generals such as Huangfu Song, Zhu Jun, and Lu Ji to lead the suppression campaign. The fighting was fierce, and casualties reached numbers counted in the tens of thousands. Though Zhang Jue eventually fell ill and died, and his brothers were killed in battle, their defeat did not bring peace. Many branches of the Yellow Turban forces survived and continued resisting the Han for nearly 2 more decades. Even after large-scale battles ended, remnants of the rebellion retreated into mountains and forests, forming independent groups that periodically attacked government forces and disrupted local administration. The Han Dynasty no longer had the strength to restore full order. Just as the empire struggled to contain the rebellion, internal conflicts within the palace grew even more destructive. When Emperor Ling died, his son Liu Bian ascended the throne as Emperor Shao at only 14 years of age. His mother, Empress Dowager He, assumed the role of regent, while her brother, He Jin, took command of the imperial army as general-in-chief. The power of the He family clashed directly with that of the eunuchs, who had long dominated imperial politics. The eunuchs feared He Jin's growing influence, while He Jin viewed them as the root of corruption and the downfall of the dynasty. He Jin recruited elite officers to strengthen his position. Among them the skilled and ambitious Yuan Shao, whose family lineage included 4 generations of high-ranking officials. Many officials in the court and across the provinces had once been protégés of the Yuan clan, and Yuan Shao's political weight was immense. He repeatedly urged He Jin to eliminate the eunuchs before they could cause irreversible harm. Although He Jin agreed in principle, he hesitated to act, fearing Empress Dowager He's reluctance to execute members of the inner palace. Under pressure, He Jin made a fateful decision. He secretly sent letters to regional warlords, ordering them to bring troops to the capital of Luoyang to intimidate the Empress Dowager into approving the destruction of the eunuchs. This act set off a chain reaction of fear, suspicion, and political desperation. When the eunuchs discovered He Jin's plot, they struck first. They lured him into the palace under false pretenses and assassinated him, believing that removing He Jin would secure their own survival. Instead, their actions triggered uncontrollable violence. Yuan Shao, furious at the murder of his commander, rallied troops and stormed the palace, killing thousands of eunuchs in a brutal purge. Emperor Shao and the young Prince Liu Xie narrowly escaped death during the chaos. Luoyang descended into further disorder as factions clashed openly in the streets. The power struggle between the eunuchs and the He family, which had begun as a political rivalry, now destroyed the central authority of the dynasty. The fallout from the assassination of He Jin marked a turning point. The Han court, already weakened by corruption and rebellion, fractured completely. Warlords across the empire began asserting their autonomy, recognizing that the imperial government no longer possessed either military strength or moral authority. The events in Luoyang created a vacuum that would soon be filled by a formidable figure. The frontier general Dong Zhuo, who marched toward the capital with his troops, intending to seize control under the pretext of restoring order. Thus, as the curtain closed on the first stage of the Eastern Han's collapse, China stood on the edge of an even deeper period of turmoil. The yellow turbans had shown the weakness of the dynasty, but the political upheaval following He Jin's death revealed that the true threat to the Han lay not outside the palace, but within it. As the capital of Luoyang descended into chaos after the purge of the eunuchs, the empire's fate shifted rapidly toward the hands of the warlords. The assassination of He Jin had not restored stability. Instead, it opened the gates to a new and even more dangerous power. From the western frontier, the formidable general Dong Zhuo marched toward the capital with his seasoned troops, answering the call that He Jin had secretly sent before his death. By the time he arrived, Luoyang was already a battlefield of competing factions, and the imperial family was caught in the middle of violence they could no longer control. Seizing the opportunity, Dong Zhuo took custody of the young Emperor Shao and his brother Liu Xie. Under the guise of protecting the dynasty, he used military intimidation to dismantle what remained of the government. Ministers who opposed him were executed or forced to flee. Realizing that Emperor Shao did not suit his political ambitions, Dong Zhuo deposed him and enthroned Liu Xie as the new sovereign, now known as Emperor Xian. Although the Han Dynasty still had an emperor, the true authority belonged entirely to Dong Zhuo, whose cruelty became known throughout the realm. His rule over Luoyang quickly transformed into tyranny. Dong Zhuo's soldiers plundered the city freely, seizing property, assaulting citizens, and executing anyone who dared resist. Fear replaced order. Dong Zhuo then made a drastic decision. Believing Luoyang to be strategically indefensible, he commanded the entire capital population to abandon the city and migrate westward to Chang'an. The forced relocation displaced countless families, who were driven along the roads under brutal conditions. After evacuating the imperial court, Dong Zhuo ordered Luoyang to be burned. Palaces, temples, archives, and homes that had stood for centuries were reduced to ash. The heart of the Han Empire was left a hollow ruin. This shocking act became the final proof to the regional warlords that Dong Zhuo was not a savior, but a usurper who threatened the entire realm. His cruelty sparked a historic reaction. Warlords from across the empire gathered to form a coalition aimed at removing him from power. At the head of this alliance was Yuan Shao, who, owing to his prestigious family lineage and political connections, became its nominal leader. Other major figures, including Cao Cao, Sun Jian, Yuan Shu, and numerous governors and inspectors of neighboring provinces responded to the call for justice. Cao Cao, among the first to act, attempted an early strike against Dong Zhuo at the city of Xingyang. However, he was repelled by Dong Zhuo's superior forces and suffered significant losses. Despite this setback, the coalition continued to press forward. For a time, the combined armies posed a real threat to Dong Zhuo's position, forcing him to retreat further west and tighten his hold on Emperor Xian. Yet internal rivalries plagued the coalition. Each warlord had his own ambitions, and while they agreed Dong Zhuo needed to be removed, they disagreed on who should command or what would follow his downfall. Meanwhile, Sun Jian, a rising military leader from the south, distinguished himself on the battlefield. His forces defeated several of Dong Zhuo's commanders and seized important strategic locations. During one such victory in Luoyang, Sun Jian discovered a treasure of immense symbolic power, the Imperial Seal, the jade artifact traditionally carried by the rightful Son of Heaven. Although this discovery was kept secret for a time, it would later shape political legitimacy throughout the Three Kingdoms period. Even as the coalition attempted to corner Dong Zhuo, a new figure emerged at the center of the drama. Lu Bu, renowned for his unmatched martial skill. Lu Bu had been adopted as Dong Zhuo's foster son and served as his fiercely loyal enforcer. Yet Dong Zhuo's violent temper and excesses alienated even those close to him. Minister Wang Yun, sensing an opportunity, orchestrated an intricate plan to turn Lu Bu against his adoptive father. Through persuasion and manipulation, Wang Yun convinced Lu Bu that killing Dong Zhuo was the only way to restore peace to the empire and secure his own future. In a dramatic moment that echoed throughout history, Lu Bu struck down Dong Zhuo inside the palace at Chang'an. His death sent shockwaves across the provinces. The warlords of the coalition rejoiced, believing the source of chaos had been eliminated. For a brief moment, it seemed that the Han Dynasty might recover. However, the removal of Dong Zhuo did not restore order. Instead, the vacuum of power invited new conflict. The powerful generals Li Jue and Guo Si, former subordinates of Dong Zhuo, seized control of the capital and plunged Chang'an into even deeper disorder. Their rivalry soon escalated into open warfare, with Emperor Xian caught helplessly between their armies. Factions rose and collapsed with dizzying speed, and the imperial court became little more than a pawn tossed between competing warlords. The dream of unity under the Han was now clearly fading. The burning of Luoyang, the migration to Chang'an, and the assassination of Dong Zhuo marked the beginning of an irreversible era in which power shifted from the emperor to the regional strongmen who commanded armies. The coalition that had once united to save the dynasty fractured as quickly as it had formed. Each warlord began to expand his own influence, preparing for the struggles that would soon define the political landscape of China. The collapse of central authority and the rise of competing military powers set the stage for new leaders to emerge. Among these rising figures was Cao Cao, whose ambitions and strategic vision would soon reshape the empire. But for now, the remnants of the Han world were still scattering, and the turmoil unleashed by Dong Zhuo's brief reign was far from over. After the dramatic assassination of Dong Zhuo, the court of Chang'an did not return to stability. Instead, the vacuum created by his death quickly invited new and even more destructive rivalries. The two most powerful commanders remaining from Dong Zhuo's faction, Li Jue and Guo Si, soon turned against one another. Their distrust escalated into full-scale war, fought directly inside and around the capital. The emperor, already a symbolic figure with little control over his fate, became a captive, passed back and forth as the two armies fought for dominance. Ministers fled, civilians were slaughtered, and Chang'an slid deeper into ruin. Amid the devastation, many court officials became convinced that the only way to restore order was to break away from the warring generals entirely. A group of loyalists succeeded in spiriting Emperor Xian out of Chang'an, escorting him on a long and dangerous journey eastward. Traveling through barren lands, pursued by rebels and plagued by hunger, the emperor and his small escort wandered for months. At one point, they were reduced to begging for food. An imperial authority seemed on the edge of extinction. Yet this struggle inadvertently opened the door for a new political force to rise. In the year 200, Cao Cao seized the opportunity to act. Understanding that legitimacy was a powerful tool, he rode out to meet the emperor and offered him protection. With his well-organized army and growing influence in the Central Plains, Cao Cao escorted Emperor Xian to the city of Shu, where he established a new imperial court. Although the dynasty was preserved in name, real authority now rested with Cao Cao. By positioning himself as the emperor's protector, he gained both political legitimacy and control over the machinery of government. From this point onward, all commands issued in the emperor's name were effectively determined by Cao Cao. While stabilizing the court, Cao Cao also focused on strengthening his military base. He cracked down on the scattered remnants of the Yellow Turban rebels, incorporating many of their surrendered soldiers into his own army. This created a disciplined and loyal force that he could use to extend his power. As his reputation grew, more talented individuals came to serve under him, forming a political and military team unmatched elsewhere in the empire. Strategists such as Xun Yu and Guo Jia provided insight, while generals like Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yuan, and Cao Ren carried out his campaigns with precision. However, Cao Cao's ambitions soon collided with personal tragedy. His father, Cao Song, was killed while traveling through Shu province, an event that enraged Cao Cao and pushed him into one of the most controversial decisions of his career. Believing that the regional governor Tao Qian was responsible for the murder, Cao Cao launched a devastating campaign against Shu province. His army ravaged cities and countryside alike, causing suffering for countless civilians. Though Tao Qian pleaded his innocence, and many officials criticized Cao Cao's actions, the campaign continued until Tao Qian died of illness. This brutal incident severely damaged Cao Cao's public reputation, but it also brought another major figure into prominence. During Tao Qian's final days, he entrusted the governance of Shu province to Liu Bei, a distant relative of the Imperial clan who had earned a reputation for loyalty and compassion. Liu Bei's emergence as a regional leader marked the beginning of a long rivalry with Cao Cao. Although Liu Bei lacked resources and military strength compared to Cao Cao, his moral standing and ability to win the hearts of the people gave him a unique advantage. His sworn brothers, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, formed the core of his military support. At the same time, Lu Bu, renowned as the greatest warrior of his age, also became involved in the struggle for Shu province. Opportunistic and bold, Lu Bu repeatedly shifted alliances, sometimes supporting Liu Bei, sometimes betraying him. In a sudden reversal, Lu Bu seized Shu province for himself, forcing Liu Bei into exile once more. With Shu province lost to Lu Bu and Cao Cao gaining authority in the court, the political landscape became increasingly volatile. Lu Bu's fierce independence made him a threat to both sides, and his unpredictable behavior ensured that conflict was inevitable. Recognizing Lu Bu's growing power and the danger he posed, Liu Bei sought help from Cao Cao. Though the two men were rivals, Cao Cao understood that eliminating Lu Bu was strategically essential. By combining their forces, Cao Cao and Liu Bei launched a coordinated campaign against him. Lu Bu fortified himself in the stronghold of Xiapi, relying on his superior martial skill and the loyalty of his elite cavalry. Yet Cao Cao employed superior strategy, cutting off supplies and besieging the city until morale collapsed. In the final assault, Lu Bu was captured. Even as he pleaded for his life and offered to serve Cao Cao, he was executed. With Lu Bu's death, one of the most formidable independent forces in the realm vanished. allowing Cao Cao to consolidate his control over northern China. The elimination of Liu Bu not only strengthened Cao Cao's military position, but also brought Liu Bei back into the political game. Although Liu Bei again found himself without a permanent base, his alliance with Cao Cao provided visibility and influence. However, their partnership was temporary. Both men understood that they represented different visions for the empire's future. By the end of these events, North China was moving steadily under Cao Cao's rule. He controlled the emperor, the court, and most of the central plains. Meanwhile, Liu Bei continued searching for a stable foundation from which to challenge Cao Cao's dominance. The collapse of Chang'an, the wandering of the emperor, and the destruction of Liu Bu created the political space necessary for new contenders to rise. The struggle for power was no longer confined to the court or to regional factions. It was becoming a contest between the emerging giants of the age, each preparing for the wars that would soon reshape the entire empire. As the political landscape continued to fracture, new challenges arose from both inside and outside the northern territories. While Cao Cao consolidated control over the emperor and expanded his authority across the central plains, the broader realm remained unstable. Bandit groups, remnants of past rebellions, and displaced communities wandered the countryside. In this environment, the northern frontier faced an especially dangerous threat from the Wuhuan tribes, who had long exploited the empire's moments of weakness. One of the most pressing crises involved Yuan Shao, the influential warlord who had once led the coalition against Dong Zhuo. Yuan Shao controlled a vast territory across Ji province and the northern plains. His background as a member of the prestigious Yuan family gave him unmatched political prestige, and for a time, he rivaled Cao Cao in strength and influence. Yet his administration grew increasingly troubled. Within his domain, the powerful Wuhuan tribes began to assert dominance, raiding border towns and weakening local defenses. Yuan Shao attempted to respond, but struggled to impose order. Meanwhile, his relationship with Cao Cao deteriorated rapidly. Although they had once fought on the same side, their ambitions inevitably collided. Tension between the two men grew sharper after Cao Cao secured Emperor Xian and positioned himself as the central authority of the Han court. Yuan Shao regarded this as a direct threat to his own legitimacy. Diplomacy failed, and preparations for war quietly began on both sides. Before this monumental confrontation, however, Yuan Shao suffered a devastating personal loss. His eldest son and designated heir, Yuan Tan, quarreled with his younger brother Yuan Shang, plunging the family into internal strife. The division within the Yuan household weakened the unity of their forces and sowed confusion among the generals who depended on clear leadership. This fracture would later determine the fate of the entire northern region. While the Yuan brothers struggled for influence, Cao Cao focused on strengthening his strategic position. His talented advisors, including Sun Yu and Guo Jia, helped him anticipate threats and prepare for the inevitable clash. Yet even as Cao Cao planned for war in the north, he continued to suppress unrest throughout the central plains. These campaigns broadened his experience and refined his military organization, laying the foundation for future victories. At the same time, Liu Bei's situation remained uncertain. After the fall of Liu Bu, Liu Bei temporarily sought refuge under Cao Cao's protection. Although Cao Cao treated him with courtesy and respect, both men understood the arrangement could not last. Liu Bei was a charismatic figure with imperial lineage and the loyalty of powerful generals such as Guan Yu and Zhang Fei. His reputation as a leader who protected civilians made him especially dangerous as a potential rival. Cao Cao monitored him closely, fearing that Liu Bei might one day challenge his authority. That moment came sooner than expected. When Yuan Shao prepared to march south and confront Cao Cao directly, Liu Bei recognized an opportunity. He escaped from Shu and traveled to join Yuan Shao. Welcomed as an ally, Liu Bei urged Yuan Shao to strike Cao Cao immediately. His warnings emphasized the danger of allowing Cao Cao to grow any stronger. Yuan Shao, however, hesitated. Despite his wealth, numbers, and prestige, he was often indecisive in moments that required swift action. He repeatedly delayed his advance, giving Cao Cao precious time to strengthen his defenses and prepare his strategies. Cao Cao understood that a confrontation with Yuan Shao was inevitable. The conflict would determine the dominant power of the north and shape the future of the Han Empire. Yuan Shao commanded far more troops, perhaps several times the size of Cao Cao's army, and possessed vast resources from his prosperous territories. Yet he lacked unity of leadership and decisive strategic vision. His officers often disagreed, and his son's rivalry cast uncertainty across his ranks. By contrast, Cao Cao's forces were highly disciplined and guided by a unified command. Advisors like Guo Jia provided him with clarity and insight, helping him interpret Yuan Shao's indecision as a critical weakness. Cao Cao prepared to strike swiftly and exploit every hesitation by his rival. Before the two great armies clashed, Yuan Shao made the significant decision to launch a southern offensive into the territory of Yan province. His goal was to overwhelm Cao Cao and pave the way for capturing the emperor. The region became a battlefield of growing tension as both sides maneuvered for advantage. Skirmishes erupted along the borders. Grain routes were disrupted. Civilians fled in search of safety. Although the decisive battle had not yet begun, everyone understood that the fate of the empire was moving toward a single critical confrontation. The rivalry between Cao Cao and Yuan Shao was no longer political. It had become a struggle for survival and legitimacy. The coming war would determine which of the two warlords would dominate the north and shape the future political order. As Cao Cao fortified his position and Yuan Shao slowly assembled his forces, both men prepared for a conflict that would echo through history. Their armies, strategies, and ambitions were poised to collide in a way that would forever alter the balance of power in the late Han world. The long-anticipated confrontation between Cao Cao and Yuan Shao finally took shape near the banks of the Yellow River. This conflict, known throughout Chinese history as the Battle of Guandu, became one of the most decisive military engagements of the late Han period. Although Yuan Shao commanded a vastly superior force, with far greater numbers of soldiers and abundant supplies, Cao Cao possessed unity of command, strategic clarity, and the counsel of brilliant advisors. The struggle that unfolded not only determined control of the northern heartlands, but also shaped the political trajectory of the entire empire. Before the armies collided, the strategic imbalance between the two leaders was unmistakable. Yuan Shao, though powerful, repeatedly hesitated and ignored critical advice. His advisors often disagreed among themselves, and Yuan Shao struggled to commit to a single course of action. Conversely, Cao Cao acted decisively. Guided by the insight of Guo Jia, Xun Yu, and other trusted strategists, he prepared his smaller but highly disciplined army for a prolonged and carefully executed campaign. As the first clashes erupted, Yuan Shao attempted to overwhelm Cao Cao through superior numbers. His forces advanced toward Guandu with the confidence of an army expecting an easy victory. Yet Cao Cao used the terrain to his advantage, fortifying his positions and conserving his troops. His strategy aimed not at meeting Yuan Shao's strength head-on, but at exploiting his rival's indecision and logistical vulnerabilities. Skirmishes intensified along the front lines as both sides tested each other's defenses. But the breakthrough neither commander expected came from an unexpected direction. During the stalemate, Yuan Shao committed a grave mistake. His most talented strategist, Tianfeng, warned him repeatedly to avoid hasty advances and instead adopt a cautious, long-term strategy. Unable to tolerate dissent, Yuan Shao imprisoned Tianfeng, cutting himself off from one of the few voices capable of guiding him through the conflict. This decision would later haunt him. At the same time, internal disputes among Yuan Shao's generals continued to undermine unity, weakening morale and clouding battlefield judgment. Meanwhile, Cao Cao faced severe shortages of grain. His army risked collapsing under the strain of limited supplies. Some of his officers urged retreat, but Cao Cao, trusting the calculations of Guo Jia, held his position and refused to withdraw. Guo Jia predicted that Yuan Shao's internal conflicts and logistical mismanagement would soon create an opening. His prediction proved accurate. The turning point arrived when Cao Cao learned that Yuan Shao's massive supply depot at Wuchao was lightly defended. If destroyed, Yuan Shao's enormous army would be unable to sustain itself. Acting swiftly, Cao Cao launched a daring night raid with a select force of elite soldiers. Moving under darkness and guided by precise intelligence, they reached Wuchao before dawn. Yuan Shao's defenders were taken by surprise. Flames tore through the granaries, igniting the supplies that fed tens of thousands of troops. The destruction was catastrophic. Yuan Shao's forces, once so confident in their numerical might, abruptly found themselves starving and disorganized. Desperate to salvage the situation, Yuan Shao launched a series of frantic counterattacks, but confusion swept through his ranks. His generals argued over how to respond, and contradictory orders spread across the battlefield. Some attempted to rescue Wuchao, others urged retreat, still others refused to move without clear commands. In the chaos, Cao Cao seized the moment. His forces struck Yuan Shao's armies as they struggled to regroup, breaking their formations and driving them into full retreat. The collapse of Yuan Shao's army at Guandu marked a decisive shift in the balance of power. Cao Cao pursued the remnants of his rival's forces, capturing strategic cities and persuading many of Yuan Shao's former allies to surrender. Although Yuan Shao himself survived the battle, his political power never recovered. The internal rivalry between his sons, Yuan Tan and Yuan Shang, continued to tear apart their faction. Instead of uniting to oppose Cao Cao, the two brothers engaged in a bitter struggle for inheritance. Cao Cao exploited their division with calculated precision. When Yuan Tan sought aid against Yuan Shang, Cao Cao offered support while steadily expanding his own influence. One by one, the territories that had once formed the mighty northern bloc fell under his control. Yuan Shao died not long after, unable to recover from the humiliation of defeat and the turmoil within his family. His death accelerated the collapse of his domain. In the aftermath, the northern plains once the base of the prestigious Yuan clan became firmly integrated into Cao Cao's expanding realm. Cities surrendered, generals defected, and local administrations accepted Cao Cao's governance. His victory at Guandu had transformed him from a regional warlord into the unchallenged master of northern China. The power he gained from this triumph allowed him to stabilize the region, reorganize the government, and consolidate the authority he exercised in the emperor's name. Yet, even as he celebrated, the broader struggle for dominance in the empire was far from over. Liu Bei remained active, watching Cao Cao's rise with growing concern. And far to the southeast, in the lands of the Yangtze River, the Sun family was building a powerful base of its own. The fate of the Han Dynasty and the shape of the coming Three Kingdoms era would be forged in the rivalries that were now beginning to crystallize. With the northern territories now firmly under Cao Cao's control after the collapse of the Yuan family, the balance of power within the empire shifted dramatically. Yet, while Cao Cao strengthened his hold over the Central Plains, events further south began to take shape, setting the stage for the next great rivalry of the era. The Sun family, ruling over the lands of the Jiangdong region, quietly emerged as a formidable power, one that would soon challenge both Cao Cao's ambitions and the future direction of the Han world. The foundation of the Sun family's rise began decades earlier, when Sun Jian, a fearless commander known for his courage and daring, first distinguished himself during the suppression of the Yellow Turbans and the campaign against Dong Zhuo. Although Sun Jian died in battle, his legacy did not end with him. His sons, Sun Si and Sun Quan, inherited both his military talent and his ambition. Sun Se, the elder brother, launched a series of bold campaigns across the lower Yangtze region, conquering cities and subduing local warlords. His rapid expansion earned him the nickname Little Conqueror, and by the time of his death, he had laid the groundwork for a stable, prosperous domain in Jiangdong. Upon Sun Si's passing, Sun Quan, still young but already displaying measured intelligence, assumed leadership. Unlike his impulsive and aggressive elder brother, Sun Quan governed with a blend of strategic caution and administrative skill. He strengthened local defenses, cultivated the loyalty of his generals, and ensured that Jiangdong remained unified, even as turmoil consumed the rest of the empire. His advisors, such as Zhou Yu, Lu Su, and Zhang Zhao, provided intellectual and military support that allowed the Sun family to build a powerful, well-organized state. During this time, Liu Bei's fortunes fluctuated dramatically. After separating from Cao Cao and losing his temporary refuge under Yuan Shao, Liu Bei found himself once again without a stable base. Pursued by Cao Cao's forces and driven from one territory to another, he faced some of the most desperate moments of his life. Yet his persistence and his ability to win the loyalty of talented individuals allowed him to remain a significant political force. A pivotal moment occurred when Liu Bei encountered Liu Biao, the governor of Jing province. Liu Biao, a cautious but benevolent ruler, offered Liu Bei sanctuary. This alliance allowed Liu Bei to regain stability and recruit followers, positioning him for future opportunities. His presence in Jing province, however, brought him into indirect conflict with Cao Cao, who viewed Jiaozhou, Jing, and the lands along the Yangtze as essential components of his long-term strategic ambitions. Cao Cao's power continued to grow. After securing the north, reorganizing agricultural production, and harnessing the court's administrative structure, he turned his attention toward the southern territories. His first major step involved confronting Liu Biao. Although Liu Biao attempted to maintain neutrality, the political situation within Jing province deteriorated after his death. His sons, Liu Qi and Liu Kong, quarreled over succession. Ultimately, Liu Kong surrendered the province to Cao Cao, granting Cao Cao control over one of the most strategically important regions in the empire. Liu Bei, recognizing the danger, fled Jing province with civilians and troops loyal to him. This event became famously known as the Long Retreat, during which Liu Bei narrowly escaped Cao Cao's pursuing armies. The chaos of this flight forged a stronger bond between Liu Bei and the people who followed him, reinforcing his reputation as a leader who protected civilians even in moments of crisis. Meanwhile, the Sun family observed these developments with growing concern. Cao Cao's control of northern China and his sudden acquisition of Jing province meant that Jiangdong now faced a looming threat. If Cao Cao succeeded in pushing further south, he could potentially cross the Yangtze River and absorb the Sun family's domain. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Sun Quan convened his advisors to debate their response. The discussions that followed would determine not only the fate of Jiangdong, but also the geopolitical structure of the entire era. It was at this moment that Lu Su, a perceptive and forward-thinking strategist, proposed a bold idea. Sun Quan should form an alliance with Liu Bei. Although the two leaders had not previously been close, their mutual need to resist Cao created a shared interest. Lu Su traveled to meet Liu Bei and initiated the negotiations that would ultimately shape the coming conflict. Concurrently, Cao Cao began assembling an enormous army. Confident from his victories in the north and the surrender of Jing province, he prepared to march southward and complete the unification of the empire under his leadership. His campaign's success seemed all but inevitable. Yet the Sun family, Liu Bei, and their mutual allies recognized that they would have one chance to stop him. The meeting between Zhou Yu and Lu Su, followed by Liu Bei's involvement, laid the foundation for one of the most consequential alliances in Chinese history. The scene was set for a confrontation that would eclipse nearly every battle that had come before it. The alliance between Liu Bei and Sun Quan marked a turning point in their struggle against the overwhelming power of Cao Cao. Soon, the great armies of North and South would face one another along the waters of the Yangtze, preparing for a conflict that would determine the shape of the empire. As Cao Cao marched south with an army said to number in the hundreds of thousands, the political and military landscape of the empire reached a critical turning point. His goal was bold and unmistakable: to conquer the lands of Jiangdong and force Sun Quan to submit, completing his unification of the realm under his authority. With the north secured and Jing province newly absorbed, Cao Cao believed that the southern warlords stood little chance of resisting his momentum. Yet this confidence would soon be tested by an alliance he had not fully anticipated. In Jiangdong, the mood was tense. Sun Quan's commanders and officials debated fiercely about whether to submit to Cao Cao or resist him. Many believed that Cao Cao's overwhelming force made resistance hopeless. Zhang Zhao and several older statesmen urged Sun Quan to surrender and preserve their people from destruction. But younger, more daring voices argued the opposite. Among them was Zhou Yu, Sun Quan's brilliant commander and childhood friend. Zhou Yu insisted that, despite Cao Cao's numbers, the Sun family possessed advantages in naval warfare, local terrain, and internal unity. If they acted boldly, he argued, they could resist and even defeat Cao Cao's massive army. It was at this moment that Lu Su returned from his meeting with Liu Bei. He brought critical news. Liu Bei had survived the collapse of Jing province and was seeking allies to resist Cao Cao. Lu Su urged Sun Quan to join forces with Liu Bei, arguing that their combined strength could disrupt Cao Cao's plans. Sun Quan, impressed by Lu Su's insight and Zhou Yu's confidence, made the decisive choice to resist rather than surrender. Liu Bei and his strategist Zhuge Liang arrived in Jiangdong shortly after. Never before had the Sun and Liu camps cooperated so closely, yet the common threat made alliance essential. Zhuge Liang met with Zhou Yu to assess whether Sun Quan truly intended to fight. Their discussions were both tense and respectful, and eventually each man recognized the other's wisdom. Zhou Yu confirmed his readiness to lead the southern forces in a direct confrontation, while Zhuge Liang outlined the broader strategic implications of resisting Cao Cao. Their partnership, though short-lived, became one of the most legendary alliances of the age, setting the stage for the coming battle. The alliance was formalized, and both sides prepared for war along the Yangtze River. Cao Cao's army, mostly composed of northern infantry and cavalry, faced the challenge of conducting a large-scale naval campaign in conditions they were unaccustomed to. Many of his soldiers were weakened by illness brought on by the damp southern climate. Meanwhile, the Sun forces were experienced sailors familiar with the river's currents, geography, and weather patterns. Their fleet was fast, agile, and expertly commanded. Zhou Yu and his officers began formulating a bold strategy. They understood that they could not defeat Cao Cao in a straightforward land battle. Instead, they would exploit his unfamiliarity with naval warfare. The key to victory, Zhou Yu argued, was to attack Cao Cao's fleet directly and destroy it before he could fully consolidate his forces along the river. But such a maneuver required precision, timing, and favorable conditions that could not be guaranteed. Zhuge Liang, for his part, proposed an audacious idea: the use of fire ships. He believed that under the right wind conditions, a coordinated fire attack could sweep through Cao Cao's massive but poorly organized fleet, which was tightly chained together for stability. Zhou Yu, skeptical at first, eventually embraced the plan when he realized that nature itself might provide the necessary opportunity. As preparations intensified, tensions rose. Cao Cao, confident in his numerical superiority, mocked the Southern Alliance and expected a swift victory. Yet he underestimated both the determination of Sun Quan and the ingenuity of Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang. His army, stretched thin and unaccustomed to the region, struggled with disease and supply shortages. The terrain favored the defenders, and the morale of the southern troops grew stronger by the day. Finally, the winds shifted. The moment the alliance had been waiting for arrived. With a strong eastern wind blowing down the river, Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang launched their assault. Fire ships loaded with dry reeds, oil, and kindling sailed straight toward Cao Cao's chained vessels. The northern soldiers, unfamiliar with naval combat and unable to maneuver their ships freely, panicked as flames erupted across the river. The tightly bound ships transformed into a wall of fire. Explosions and chaos tore through Cao Cao's fleet, reducing his once mighty navy to charred wreckage. Seizing the moment, the southern forces launched a coordinated attack, striking at the disoriented remnants of Cao Cao's army. The destruction of the fleet forced Cao Cao to abandon his campaign and retreat northward. Disease, exhaustion, and the harsh conditions of the southern winter further depleted his forces as they withdrew. The Battle of Red Cliffs, as it would later be known, became one of the most famous victories in Chinese history. It marked a turning point in the era. The Sun family secured its domain in the southeast. Liu Bei gained the legitimacy and momentum he desperately needed, and Cao Cao's dream of immediate unification was shattered. From the ashes of Red Cliffs emerged a new political orderon that would ultimately take shape as the Three Kingdoms. Yet in the aftermath of the battle, the alliance began to shift once more. The struggle for territory and survival was far from over, and new rivals were preparing to rise. The aftermath of the Battle of Red Cliffs reshaped the political landscape of the empire. Cao Cao's retreat opened a vast opportunity for both Liu Bei and Sun Quan, who had cooperated to stop a common enemy, but now faced a new question. How would the territories of Jing province be divided and governed? The alliance that had formed out of necessity began to shift as both sides sought to secure their long-term interests. Liu Bei, whose fortunes had risen dramatically after escaping from Cao Cao's pursuit, recognized that control of Jing province was essential for establishing a stable foundation. His strategist, Zhuge Liang, argued that Jing served as a strategic bridge between the north and the south. Whoever held it could expand in either direction. Sun Quan, however, also understood the value of Jing province. With Jiangdong secure but hemmed in by the river, he needed additional land to expand his influence. Thus, even before the smoke of Red Cliffs had fully faded, tensions quietly resurfaced. Zhou Yu was sent by Sun Quan to take charge of the region and secure it for Jiangdong, but Zhuge Liang cleverly maneuvered to delay him. Through diplomatic skill and precise timing, Zhuge Liang ensured that Liu Bei would have the first opportunity to enter the region and establish authority among the local population. With support from his generals and advisors, Liu Bei gradually took control of key cities, winning the trust of civilians who admired his reputation for fairness and compassion. Meanwhile, Sun Quan confronted internal pressures. Although Red Cliffs had been a tremendous victory, the Sun family still faced constant threats on its borders from mountain tribes, local rebels, and potential incursions from Cao Cao's remaining forces. Sun Quan needed a strong, stable ally to keep Cao Cao from returning. Yet at the same time, he could not allow Liu Bei to grow too powerful. Cao Cao, despite his defeat, quickly recovered his political position. Returning north, he focused on strengthening his administration and consolidating control over his vast territories. His authority remained unchallenged in the imperial court, and he continued to rule in the emperor's name. Though unable to conquer the south, Cao Cao preserved his dominance in the north and began preparing for future campaigns. Back in Jing province, the political situation evolved rapidly. Zhou Yu's sudden death created a profound vacuum in Jiangdong's leadership. His brilliance, energy, and military insight had been essential to Sun Quan's power. Without him, Sun Quan leaned increasingly on Lu Su, who favored maintaining a peaceful alliance with Liu Bei. Lu Su believed that Jiang Dong should avoid direct conflict with Liu Bei for the time being and focus on stabilizing its own territory. Under Lu Su's influence, negotiations continued, and a temporary arrangement was reached. Liu Bei would hold the southern parts of Jing province, while Sun Quan retained the eastern areas along the river. Although the compromise prevented immediate conflict, it did not resolve the underlying tension. Both sides viewed Jing province as essential to their future ambitions. During this period, Liu Bei experienced a series of dramatic changes in fortune. With Zhuge Liang's guidance and the loyalty of his sworn brothers, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, he strengthened his position. Yet he still lacked a permanent base large enough to sustain expansion. That opportunity came when Liu Bei encountered Liu Zhang, the governor of Yi province in the southwest. Yi province was wealthy, fertile, and protected by natural barriers. But Liu Zhang feared threats from other warlords and requested Liu Bei's assistance. Zhuge Liang immediately recognized the strategic significance of this invitation. If Liu Bei could gain influence in Yi province, he would finally have a secure domain capable of supporting large-scale ambitions. Liu Bei accepted Liu Zhang's invitation and entered the region with his forces. At first, relations between the two leaders appeared friendly, but Liu Zhang's indecisiveness and fear undermined his own position. As tensions grew, many local officials and generals began favoring Liu Bei, who displayed strong leadership and a capacity for decisive action. Gradually, the political atmosphere shifted in Liu Bei's favor. Meanwhile, Guan Yu remained behind in Jing province to secure Liu Bei's holdings. His presence, along with the growing influence of the Liu family in Yi province, raised concerns among Sun Quan's advisors, some of whom argued that Liu Bei was becoming too powerful. Nevertheless, for the moment, Sun Quan remained focused on external threats rather than internal divisions. As Liu Bei's influence expanded throughout Yi province, his ambitions transformed. He was no longer merely a wandering warlord or a displaced noble. He now had the opportunity to build a stable state-owned capable of rivaling Cao Cao in the north and the Sun family in the southeast. The struggle that followed in Yi province marked the next major shift in the balance of power. Through diplomacy, alliances, and eventually military confrontation, Liu Bei gradually took control of the region. The conquest was not swift, but with patience and strategy, he succeeded. Once Yi province fell under his authority, Liu Bei acquired the resource base he had long needed. The rise of Liu Bei in Yi province, the steady consolidation of Sun Quan in Jiangdong, and the continued dominance of Cao Cao in the north marked the emergence of a new political structure. The empire was no longer moving toward reunification. Instead, it was crystallizing into a tripartite order, three great powers preparing to define the next era of Chinese history. The foundations of the three kingdoms were now in place, and each leader's next actions would determine the borders and battles of the years to come. With Liu Bei now firmly established in Yi province, the political structure of the realm shifted once again. The years that followed the conquest brought dramatic changes, not only for Liu Bei himself, but for the entire region surrounding the Yangtze River and the western frontier. As the dust settled, Liu Bei transformed from a wandering claimant into the ruler of a prosperous and strategically vital domain. Yi province, protected by mountains and rivers, provided fertile farmland, large populations, and natural defenses that shielded it from invasion. Under Liu Bei's leadership, its economy stabilized and its administration strengthened. Zhuge Liang organized agricultural reforms, restored irrigation systems, and worked to integrate local clans into Liu Bei's new government. Generals such as Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, and others secured the region's borders, ensuring that Liu Bei's authority could grow without internal disturbance. Yet even as stability took hold, new challenges emerged. News soon reached Liu Bei that Guan Yu, still stationed in Jing province, had grown increasingly powerful in the eyes of both allies and rivals. Guan Yu's reputation as a fierce and honorable warrior attracted widespread admiration, but it also made him a target. Cao Cao feared Guan Yu's influence, recognizing that Guan Yu's presence in Jing province posed a direct threat to his plans in the north. Sun Quan, too, viewed the situation with concern. Jiangdong could not expand westward as long as Guan Yu held control over the river crossings. The tension heightened when Liu Bei, seeking to fulfill Zhuge Liang's long-term plan, declared himself king of Hanzhong after defeating Cao Cao's forces in the mountainous region to the north of Yi province. The Hanzhong campaign was costly and intense, but its victory gave Liu Bei a commanding position overlooking Cao Cao's territory. The declaration of kingship marked a symbolic challenge to Cao Cao's authority at court and signaled Liu Bei's intent to restore imperial legitimacy under his own banner one day. Cao Cao, though troubled by Liu Bei's rise, faced other concerns as well. His health began to decline, and internal rivals watched for any sign of weakness. Although still the most powerful figure in the empire, he sensed that the era ahead would present challenges that required a new generation of leadership. Meanwhile, Sun Quan prepared for his own ambitions. Jiangdong prospered under his rule. Its economy flourished, its military expanded, and its people enjoyed relative stability compared to the war-torn north. Yet Sun Quan's calculations increasingly pointed toward one unavoidable conclusion. His expansion and survival required full control of Jing province. Without Jing, Jiangdong could not push inland, and Liu Bei's western power would continue to grow unchecked. The fragile balance finally broke when Guan Yu launched a bold campaign against Cao Cao's forces in the north. Exploiting a moment of vulnerability, Guan Yu captured strategic fortresses and even threatened to overwhelm Cao Cao's position in the region. His successes shocked both Cao Cao and Sun Quan, who realized that Guan Yu's growing momentum might unravel their plans entirely. Sun Quan made his move. While Guan Yu was fully engaged in the northern campaign, Sun Quan ordered his generals to strike at Jing province. The assault was swift and decisive. Caught between two enemies, Guan Yu's forces were overwhelmed. He attempted to retreat but found himself surrounded. In a tragic end that would echo through Chinese history, Guan Yu and his son were captured and executed. The death of Guan Yu shattered the delicate alliance between Liu Bei and Sun Quan. Liu Bei, devastated by the loss of his sworn brother, vowed revenge. For him, the conflict was no longer simply a political struggle. It became deeply personal. When he learned that Sun Quan had taken Jing province and executed Guan Yu, his grief transformed into fury. Zhuge Liang, however, urged caution. He warned that charging blindly into a war against Sun Quan would weaken their position and leave them vulnerable to Cao Cao in the north. But Liu Bei could not be deterred. Preparing a massive army drawn from the resources of Yi province and Hanzhong, he launched a southern campaign to punish Sun Quan and reclaim Jing province. Liu Bei's forces advanced with tremendous force and initial success. Yet his momentum slowed as the terrain, weather, and extended supply lines gradually wore down his army. Sun Quan's new strategist, Lu Sun, observed Liu Bei's aggressive advance with patience. Refusing to engage in premature battles, Lu Sun waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came when the summer heat transformed the battlefield. Liu Bei's camps, spread across vast forested areas, became vulnerable to Lu Shun's planned fire attack. The coordinated flames swept through the camps, destroying Liu Bei's supply lines, scattering his troops, and forcing a devastating retreat. Liu Bei barely escaped with his life, withdrawing to the city of Baidi. It was there, weakened by illness and burdened by sorrow, that Liu Bei spent his final days. Before his death, he entrusted the future of his state to Zhuge Liang, asking him to guide his young son Liu Shan and preserve the kingdom they had fought so long to build. As Liu Bei passed away, the political structure of the realm entered its final stage. Three rival powers now clearly dominated the landscape: Cao Cao's Wei in the north, Sun Quan's Wu in the southeast, and the state Liu Bei had forged soon to be known as Shuyin the southwest. The world was now poised on the edge of a new era. The dream of restoring the Han had faded. What remained was the impending struggle among the three great powers that would define the age to come. With the death of Liu Bei in Baidi, the political order of the realm shifted once more. His passing marked the end of an era shaped by the ambitions, alliances, and rivalries of the great warlords who had risen during the final years of the Han Dynasty. What remained was a world divided into three powerful states: Wei, Wu, and Shui, ruled by leaders whose actions would determine the fate of the land in the years to come. In the north, Cao Pai, the son of Cao Cao, moved swiftly to consolidate his authority after his father's death. Cao Cao, who had dominated the imperial court for decades, left behind a vast administrative structure and a disciplined military machine. Cao Pai inherited these advantages and made a bold decision. He forced Emperor Xian to abdicate and declared himself the new ruler, establishing the kingdom of Wei. This event formally ended the centuries-long Han Dynasty and ushered in a new political order. Cao Pai then issued titles to Sun Quan, recognizing him as King of Wu in an attempt to secure a political balance within the fractured empire. Yet, beneath this diplomatic gesture, rivalry simmered. Sun Quan accepted the title for strategic reasons, but he remained wary of Wei's growing power. For the moment, stability depended on cautious maneuvering rather than open war. In the southwest, the kingdom founded by Liu Bei transformed under a new leader. Liu Shan, his young and inexperienced son, ascended the throne. Before his death, Liu Bei had entrusted the governance of his state to Zhuge Liang, whose wisdom, discipline, and strategic brilliance had guided him for many years. Zhuge Liang now assumed the burden of maintaining Shu's stability while preparing for future conflict. Recognizing that Shu remained far weaker than Wei and Wu, he emphasized agricultural production, government discipline, and military organization. But Zhuge Liang also held fast to Liu Bei's final wish, to restore the Han legacy by challenging Wei. Although cautious by nature, Zhuge Liang believed that the survival of Shu depended on maintaining an active military posture. If Wei were allowed to consolidate its power unchecked, Shu would eventually be crushed. Thus began Zhuge Liang's series of northern expeditions campaigns that would later become legendary. Meanwhile, Sun Quan strengthened his own position in the southeast. Jiangdong thrived economically. Its trade networks expanded, and its naval power grew formidable. Yet Sun Quan faced continuing challenges: rebellions within his territory, uprisings among mountain tribes, and diplomatic tensions with Shu regarding the borders of Jing province. Despite their rivalry, both Sun Quan and Zhuge Liang understood that neither could afford to provoke a full-scale conflict, while Wei remained the strongest of the three kingdoms. The balance among the three powers resembled a fragile triangle. Each kingdom sought survival, expansion, and legitimacy, yet each also feared the others. Shu looked to the north and dreamed of reclaiming the legacy of the Han. Wu looked westward, seeking control of river routes that would ensure its security. Wei, the largest and most powerful, looked outward toward a unified realm. This period became defined by a mixture of warfare, diplomacy, and intrigue. Zhuge Liang launched multiple campaigns into Wei territory, aiming to weaken its strength and reclaim lost lands. His strategies were meticulous, grounded in logistics, planning, and psychological insight. Yet, despite several early successes, Shu lacked the manpower and resources needed for a decisive breakthrough. Zhuge Liang's health deteriorated under the enormous pressure of maintaining both government and military affairs. Eventually, he died during one of his northern campaigns, leaving Shu without the guiding force that had sustained it for so many years. In Wu, Sun Quan continued to rule effectively, earning respect for his long governance and high political skill. But after his death, the unity of Wu slowly unraveled. Factional conflicts and weak successors undermined the foundation he had built, leaving the state vulnerable to outside threats. Wei, too, faced internal challenges. After Cao Pai's death, his successors struggled to balance the demands of governance with the need to defend the kingdom's vast borders. Although Wei remained the most powerful of the three states, it could not escape the internal strife that afflicted all kingdoms of the era. Over time, the balance began to tilt decisively in Wei's favor. As Shu weakened following Zhuge Liang's death, and as Wu faltered under unstable leadership, Wei's powerful minister Sima Yi gradually rose to dominance. Deeply intelligent and patient, Sima Yi consolidated his authority through carefully managed political maneuvering. His control expanded until the ruling Cao family became little more than figureheads. Eventually, Sima Yi's descendants, the Sima clan, overthrew the Cao family entirely, ending the state of Wei and establishing the Jin dynasty. Under the leadership of Sima Yan, the Jin armies launched campaigns that conquered Wu and brought the Three Kingdoms period to an end. For the first time in nearly a century, China was unified again. Yet the legacy of the Three Kingdoms endured far beyond the lives of its rulers. Their stories of loyalty, ambition, betrayal, strategy, and heroism became woven into the cultural fabric of China. Figures such as Zhuge Liang, Guan Yu, Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan transcended their historical roles and became symbols of wisdom, courage, honor, and complexity. The era's dramatic struggles shaped not only the political future of the empire, but also its literature, folklore, and national identity. Thus, the turbulent centuries surrounding the fall of the Han and the rise of the Three Kingdoms came to a close not with the triumph of any one hero, but through the shifting tides of power, ambition, and destiny. The world these leaders built and destroyed left behind lessons that would be remembered for generations.